Javid, this dude is flying under the radar. If you know the name,
I thought you were gonna say he throw flying knees. That too, huh?
Well, he do that too, but he throws spinning back kicks. Okay, we got UFC Fight Night, Nassourdine Imavov versus Kelvin Gastelum. And the first fight on the card is going to be Priscila Cachoeira versus Sijara Eubanks. So according to Tapology, 81% of people think that Cachoeira is going to win. How you feel about that one?
I'm going to be honest, her record speaks for itself. Sijara, 7-7. She's not a horrible fighter by any means. It's just
the skills.
I'm just not seeing that ability to finish opponents. Because if you're going to look at a lot of her fights, you see like a bunch of decisions. But the only thing is, the way to beat Priscila is to take her down. And her losses, her opponents took her down multiple times, controlled her on the ground.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with Sijara, sometimes she has difficulties taking her opponents down. If you notice that?
I'm looking at the names of people who beat Cachoeira. Valentina Shevchenko, Molly McCann, this Luana Carolina. She's not too bad either. She only got 2 losses in the UFC. And then let me go check out Jillian Roberts.
You know who that is, right? She just submitted Rose
at the
that's the
Fury UFC.
Yeah, she's dangerous. I think it's different levels. She's almost like a gatekeeper. I think she's like one of those fighters to where if you could beat her, you're elite.
And it's weird because she's not a bad fighter, but it's just she's tough, she's durable, a workhorse. She's not really a threat in any particular area. And she's not a knockout threat. She's not a submission threat.
And it's just weird because she gets these brawls and she be looking uncomfortable. Like she doesn't really want to get hit. And I don't know if it's just the lack of knockout power.
Or the lack of athleticism or something. It's just something about...
Because it was weird because she was knocking people out before the UFC. But then you come to the UFC and it's just like...
And really, I know Cachoeira had that tough fight against Ji Yeon Kim where most people thought that she lost it, but the judges gave it to her. But at the same time, she bounced back and she knocked out Ariane Lipski. And that's a tough person to just knock out like that in 1 minute. That's crazy. So I'm going to have to lean towards Zombie Girl.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Priscila too on this one.
Yeah, it just, from Sijara, I just don't see anything in her.
Her confidence is not there.
It seems like she's confident. It's just her skill. The skills are not there. That's just what it is.
Yeah, the last thing I'm going to say is she's one of those type fighters who can only take fighters down and ground and pound them, but anybody who she can't take down and ground and pound, she struggles with.
Who is she even grounded?
Elisa Reed. And then early on in her career, she was able to out-rap her opponents.
The next fight we have up is going to be Jimmy Flick versus Charles Johnson. Oh, this fight is 50-50 according to Tapology. But Jimmy Flick, the last time we saw him was actually, he retired after he beat Cody Durden. That's why we hadn't seen him in 2 years.
And that's never a good sign when a fighter retires like that.
Yeah. Now, he was riding a 4-fight win streak before he retired and had a good win. And I don't know if it was because of injury or just a personal thing or whatever, but he's back now. He's fighting Charles Johnson. And Charles is coming off of a controversial split decision win against Zalgas where it looked like he was down the first 2 rounds and then started to pick up steam in the 3rd round. And I told you this, Charles, because of his LFA background and being a champion for the last few fights, it seems like his game was more geared towards a 5-round fight. But in the UFC, you're not in the main event or like a title fight or something. You're in a 3-round fight. And so if you give up those first 2 rounds and then you start picking it up in the 3rd round and looking real good, but you still down those initial 2 rounds, for whatever reason, they decided to give the fight to Charles Johnson. I think they really were just kind of saving him because Zalgas, he's not finna go on and be no champion. It ain't like he pulling in a bunch of numbers or anything, which I know they're still messed up to take that from him because he probably deserved to win at 29-28.
And also, you got to think about it's the flyweight division, so they're trying to get rid of some of these guys in the top 10 who don't really deserve to be in there.
I don't think Zalgas was top 10.
You don't think he was in the
He
top
wasn't
10?
in the top 10. Oh. Probably want to get rid of some of these guys who ain't moving the needle.
Oh, yeah,
but Charles Johnson can move the needle. So
the only thing is with Jimmy Flick, I think he has some of the worst striker in the UFC.
But I will say this, if you look at Jimmy Flick's record, he got 16 wins, 14 by submissions. The thing is, he got 4 knockout losses though. And in order to get the fight to the ground, you got to think about this. Charles was taken down repeatedly by Mokaev on short notice. And Ankalaev ain't just a wrestler. He got submissions as well.
Mm.
And Charles was able to get up, avoid all submissions. He defended a lot of takedowns, and then he would get taken down and stand right back up. But he never was just outstruck or in any type of submission danger the entire time. And
obviously, Muhammad is a way better wrestler than Jimmy Flick. How is Jimmy going to get the fight to the ground? He's one of those type grapplers.
And even better technically with submissions, because the people that Jimmy beat, the people he submitted was like lower level. You know, like, you're supposed to beat these people, man. Like, you got to realize these fights are dating back to 2010.
But the thing is with Jimmy Flick, I'm looking at some of his losses. He got steamed. He got embarrassed, like, early on in the fight. And I'm not going to pick him in this fight, but one thing is with Charles, if he kind of plays around and he doesn't pull the trigger, he might be in trouble. And because the thing is with Jimmy, all he needs is one opportunity. We seen that Cody Durden fight. Cody was embarrassing him. And he went for a flying triangle. He got the finish. And the thing is, if Charles play around and try to win a decision, he might end up in the third round in a bad position. He might end up tapping out.
Well, I'm going to tell you something else. If Charles don't get started earlier on, he's going to be in trouble. Now you're in the UFC. You know how they're judging fights. You know how they're scoring fights. You cannot wait until the end of the second round, third round to start getting into your groove. That's why I think a lot of people fall into that. They might start picking it up as the fight goes on, but now you done lost a 29-28 decision when you had way more to give and way more to do. And let's say if it was a championship fight and there was another 2 rounds, maybe you could have went out there and maybe got a finish or whatever. But at the same time, that's not what this is. So in a 3-round fight, there's no reason Charles Johnson should lose this fight. But he should be acclimated now and realize you got 15 minutes. You only got 15 minutes.
Yeah, if Jimmy had better striking, I may actually pick them. But because of the lack of the striking offense,
and the wrestling to get the fight down to do a submission, because you're not going to be hitting people with flying try.
Absolutely not.
And but one thing that worked against Charles in the last fight against August was leg kicks. But the thing is, Jimmy, he gonna be getting pieced up, man, because his hands ain't even really like the most dangerous. So
easy call for Charles.
The next fight is going to be Daniel Argueta versus Isaac Dulgarian. According to Topology, wow, 80% of people think that Argueta is going to win.
No way.
No, I'm serious.
They think Argueta going to win?
Look, and that's according to 1,200, almost 1,300 votes.
You got one guy who's an undefeated wrestler who's been steaming people and who finished all his opponents. And then you have another guy who's Dan Argueta, who's 0-1 in the UFC.
Yeah, but you got to realize Argueta lost to Ricky Tercios in the quarterfinals of the Ultimate Fighter. So he was around. And then he took the fight against Damon Jackson on short notice. And he got beat only by decision. But in that fight, this is why I'm still picking him, even though he has a little bit more experience. The reason why I'm going to pick Isaac is because, first of all, oh man, I'm not going to lie. If I'm looking at the level of competition of Isaac's opponents, man, it's very low. This is why people picking Daniel. Look, the people he beat 2-2, 0-0, 2-3, 1-1, and then he finally beat somebody who was 7-2. Meanwhile, Dan Argueta went to a decision with Damon Jackson. You know how dangerous Damon is.
Yeah.
And he went to a decision on a short notice. And if you watch that fight, basically Damon Jackson just took him down repeatedly and took his back and backpacked him for 3 rounds. And then in the 3rd round, Dan actually started doing good. And then he lost towards the end, but that was just like the experience of Damon Jackson, kicking in.
But you also got to understand, Isaac is an All-American wrestler in college, in Notre Dame College. So I think people have to factor in the fact that he was badly out-wrestled by Damon, and the fact that Isaac wrestling is probably better than Damon's.
Yeah, well, that's true. Now, this is what I would say. Well, it's because Isaac doesn't have as much MMA experience as Daniel. But I'm still going to pick Isaac for the simple fact that when I know the level of competition was low, and he beat a decent person that was 7-2, but with his base being wrestling, and this is how he fight like Jack Shore. Jack Shore got a clear game plan every time he fight. I'm striking with you enough to get you comfortable, to take you down, and to submit you. Point blank, period. Look, if I catch you with a spinning strike, if I catch you with some of this other stuff, cool. But he has a clear game plan. When you watch Isaac fight, he take his opponents down, he immediately get to the back, and then ground and pound and submission. But maybe that looked so easy because of the level of competition. But I really think he can take Dan down, at the very least control him, because Damon Jackson controlled him for 9 minutes.
If I was saying before the fight that Dan Argueta kind of resembled Ricky Simone, and kind of how he looked, just think about it, the long hair, he big and strong wrestler. But then again, obviously Ricky Simone striking ain't there. But Ain't no excuse because he trained with Greg Jackson.
No, I'm saying Ricky Simone striking is there.
No, but I'm saying, but his striking ain't there.
Yeah, you said Ricky
Argueta.
Simone striking with them.
Oh, my bad. His Argueta striking is not there. But he trained with Greg Jackson and stuff, so it's like you've been training for years and your striking ain't there. So it's like, what's taking so long?
Because his game plan obviously gets the fight to the ground, but the striking is not there at all. And he's not a bad fighter. Obviously, he only has one loss, one official loss to Damon Jackson on short notice. But I'm going to pick Isaac, man. It seems like even with his small body of work, it seems like there seems to be a higher ceiling. Because the striking, it ain't all there. Don't get me wrong. He don't want to strike either. But he at least taking people down and just getting them out of there real quick. And
see, I might not make a prediction for this one because we can't look at Dan Argueta's fight against Damon and say, oh, he's not good.
Yeah.
But then again, the thing is, Isaac, he hasn't had a fight in the UFC yet.
And he's making his debut, so he could easily go in there and get starched because Dan has been on the Ultimate Fighter. He done been in there on short notice against somebody who was very dangerous, and he survived 3 rounds. And who's not to say that Damon Jackson might not have submitted Isaac in that same situation. Ooh. So
I think Isaac's gonna win, but it's not a confident official pick.
Yeah, low confident pick.
Yeah.
So the next fight up is gonna be Allan Nascimento versus Carlos Hernandez. 79% of voters think that Nascimento is gonna win. I would have to say I agree. I've watched Carlos fight several times. I have not been impressed. The most impressive thing is the fact that he only has one loss. And he's not a bad fighter. But, okay, so check this out. Carlos Hernandez has 8 wins. 4 come by submission, 4 by decision. So you know what that means.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, so is your plan to take Allan Nascimento down? Because obviously that would be a terrible game plan. I go over here and look at Allan's record. He got 13 submissions out of 19 wins.
You know who he trained with, right?
Charles Oliveira. So what's the game plan for Carlos? The reality is Allan has been in there with Tiger. He's been in there with Jake Hadley. He's been in there with Holly and Paiva. He has more experience. He has more tools to win. And the way to beat him, Carlos don't have the tools to do that. Like, I'm sorry. Now, one thing that's interesting is the last 3 losses for Allan have been by split decision.
And that's how Carlos get the job done,
and
too.
Carlos, if you look at his record, his last 2 wins came by split decision. So if some kind of way he can keep it, sometimes people don't be as gifted as other people, but if you got good cardio, that'll save you because, you know, once you get exhausted, everything goes out the window. But you got to make it to that point, though, you know? So.
Yeah. And the thing is that Carlos, he's extremely durable.
Yes. That's one thing he got going for him.
He fought somebody named Daniel Perez. Daniel hurt him, and he just recovered almost like he was never hurt. I'm not too sold on Carlos, man.
But the thing is, when you look at these split decision wins, it's like they were split decisions for a reason. They really could have went either way.
Yeah.
Because he didn't do anything. He didn't have anything in particular that stood out. The wrestling, the striking, submissions. Like, the main thing was cardio and toughness, which is good, but
not even that. But the way you ever see how he throw his punches? His punches are not like
he's not committing to them to actually do damage.
It's like just fast.
But this the UFC. This is not some local competition where you can win a bunch of fights doing that against low level competition. I just think Allan gonna go in there and at the very least he gonna control him for 15 minutes and probably get a submission. I'm just gonna call it.
I think he's gonna be competitive, but I think Allan is just gonna be a step ahead of him.
When he started wrestling, you can't tell me Jake Hadley ain't more dangerous than Carlos Hernandez.
You think Carlos Hernandez 70% takedown defense is good enough?
No,
because I think Allan.
Look at the people he's been fighting.
Yeah.
So none of those people.
Yeah,
you know,
good point.
Carlos ain't as good as Jake Hadley, bro. I'm sorry.
He's overrated, man. I hate to say it. I'm not too impressed with him.
And the next fight we have is somebody who I have been very impressed with. This dude, he don't have a big name, but it's Javid Basharat versus Mateus Mendonca. So now,
and they both undefeated too.
Yeah, but okay, so this is the thing. So one thing that Mateusz is known for is winning 7 fights. Hold on. Was winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He won 7 fights in 7 months or something.
Oh, yeah.
But if you go back and look at the people record that he beat, because I was like, oh, that's real impressive. I'll go back and look at the records of the people. I think there was a few decent guys. Hold on. Okay, so I'm finna look at the last few people. So we got Pedro, 21-7. Okay, that's cool. Then we get 0-1. And these are his latest fights. But then we got 5-3. And then we get 9-2, which that's decent. 1-4. I mean, you look at the records, it's like you're supposed to win 4-5. 2-1, and the last person is 0-3. Bro, you're supposed to win X amount of fights in 7 months when you fighting people who have a sub .500 record. So I hate to say it, man, but I think we can't necessarily factor that in too much. Now, one thing is he did step up against the people who had decent records. He did have good fights with them, but he took them to a decision. Everybody else he finished.
Yeah, so it's like the higher the competition is and his opponents, the more likely that he's not going to be able to finish
to
them.
put him away as fast. But then when he got to the contender and he fought Ajim was 6-2 though. 5-2 6-1 at the time.
That's the guy he embarrassed.
He put him down in 1 minute.
He's not really known as a one-punch knockout guy, so don't be fooled by that. But one thing that stands out with Mateus, you know what the worst part of his game is?
What?
His striking defense. If you watch his fights, man, like he fought somebody named Pedro CJ. That guy dropped him. He was able to come back and like hold him against the cage. Because if you look at Mateus, if he can't take his opponent down, he tends to hold him against the cage and clinch him up and stuff. Because I think the thing is, he tends to slow down like the second and third round.
Because so he used to putting people away real fast.
Yeah, but like it's not bad to hold people against the cage because you still scoring points.
And you can win like that in the UFC. In fact, a lot of the elite fighters who have a wrestling base, if the striking ain't up to par or if they're fighting somebody whose striking is too dangerous, that's how they win.
Usman, DC.
Man, you got all kind of people.
But the thing is, when Mateus throw punches, that's when he's more vulnerable. Because sometimes he throws punches with his hands down. And then you got to understand who he's fighting against. Javid.
And that's what I was going to say. Listen to me. You're not about to land none of that.
Not even that, but he's going to get countered.
Listen, you're about to get pieced up real bad. Javid, this dude is flying under the radar. If you know the name.
I thought you were going to say he throw flying knees. That too, huh?
Well, he do that too, but he throws spinning back kicks. The beautiful thing about Javid is that, well, he's not like a one-punch knockout guy. He's more of like he pours it on, like he'll frustrate you because he's in and out movement, lateral movement, hiding everything behind the jab. He'll go to the body. He'll clinch up, throw a knee. Whenever you close the distance, or if he closes the distance, he'll throw those sneaky, like Kelvin Gastelum elbows.
That's not even the best part about his game. The best part about his game is the fact that he does all that and he still fights long. He still stays on the outside. He still doesn't really get hit a lot.
Yes.
Because, man, you were just talking about this earlier when he fought against Tony Gravely.
Yes. Because
Tony real sneaky with his right hand. And the thing is, Javid will just get close enough to land his punches, but then get out of harm's way.
Yes, I agree. Man, his striking almost remind me of like a little bit sharper version of Gegard. But you know, Gegard striking is like, it's kind of lazy. Like, it's almost like if it is personality where it's like it's too laid back and too lackadaisical.
Oh, yeah.
But it's almost like Javid has like a workman's version of striking to Gegard, if that makes sense.
I thought you were going to say TJ Dillashaw.
No, but TJ had more power, way more power. But no, you know who he strike like? Actually, now think about it. Who? He strike like Nassourdine Imavov. Does that make sense? They got a similar...
I understand what you're saying. The difference between Javid and these other guys are the spinning kicks and the knees and the elbows. A lot of these guys, like Gegard,
I'm talking about the build, like the actual, like the body type, and then
the
fighting long, like that type.
I think he's a combination of a couple people, a couple fighters.
And speaking of combinations, he gonna land a lot of them because
it's like they're different because Javid has real high fight IQ and defensive awareness. But Mateus doesn't really have that.
And look, Mateus is undefeated. He's been impressive up until now. I think he can do good if they give him a better matchup after this, because this is just too much, I think, for right now. Because Javid has been in there with Trevor Jones and Tony Gravely already.
And they wasn't able to take him down. Those are two big, strong wrestlers.
Hey, he was able to... Actually, he wrestled Tony Gravely at one point.
Oh, yeah, he took him down.
And then he outstruck Trevor Jones, who is mostly a striker. So, so he was able to outstrike somebody who is mostly a striker. And he was able to kind of have the grappling edge over somebody who is a wrestling base. So,
hey, we made this video yesterday about like who we think on... be some of the best fighters in the world by the end of the year. Yeah. And Javid was somebody I forgot to say. I think he's going to be in the top 5 real soon.
Yeah, top 10. Top 10. Top 5 that's a lot, man.
Javid, it's just his style just annoys people, man. Like, nobody wants to fight.
He's in the bantamweight.
But who's going to want to fight him, though?
Dude, he's in the bantamweight. Did you hear what I said?
I understand what you're saying. I think his style...
Umar, Adrian Yanez, Ricky Simone, Jack Shore.
I think he's better than Adrian Yanez, man. That style.
I would agree with you for the simple fact that I think Adrian take too much damage before he start getting into his rhythm. And Javid, he might get hit here and there, but it don't happen often. But Mateus gonna have to get matched up with better, because it seems he does his best when he fighting people who don't have that much experience. When you come to the UFC, you fighting people who have that experience.
That's not even the issue.
And that's gonna be a problem.
The biggest issue with me is he's not developing as fast as I want him to. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because like I'm not seeing him put everything together, the striking, the wrestling. He has the power. Obviously, we saw his last fight. It ended in like a minute, and he has the wrestling in the ground game, but he has to put it together.
But he's not gonna be able to put it together fighting nobody like Javid though.
Absolutely.
And they wrong for giving him that matchup. But then we move on to the next fight. We got Mateus, Rebecki. There's a lot of people with this name now. In the last few months, how many people have that name, Mateus or Mateusz?
Mateus, and the other guy who just beat Matt Chanel.
Yeah. In the previous fight we just went over, there was somebody with that name.
Mateusz.
Yeah. So now we got Rebecki versus Nick Fiore, who's taking this fight on short notice for Omar Morales or somebody.
But this Mateus is the biggest one out of all of them.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. This guy is stepping in for Omar Morales. So he's stepping in. He's 6-0. I'm gonna be real with you. Mateus Rebecki he got a terrible nickname, but it's right. Rebesti. This dude is a beast. You talk about somebody, he's kind of like a shorter, stockier guy, clearly strong. And when you go watch him fight, dude, you talking about he's running through people. He's 16-1 right now.
If you ever watch him fight, he's actually more skilled than what I thought he would be.
100%.
If you just look at his body type, he just look like somebody who just bowled up and who just sloppy.
Yes.
And and wild and still.
But then
when you watch him, he move his head. I'm not comparing him to Josh Emmett, but because Josh kind of like that, because Josh look kind of stiff, but he got some skills. And Mateus kind of like that too, because you look at him and he's moving his head, he's moving around.
And you know the crazy thing? He's so strong, he picked these guys up and slam them. Did you see all those arm bars?
Oh, yeah.
Right, this dude got the cleanest arm bars. It's like, oh my goodness. If this dude grab you, you in trouble. But Nick, he's taking the fight on short notice, man.
This is a big mismatch.
This is tough. But Nick's primary way of winning is getting the fight to the ground. When you go look up Nick's record, a lot of his fights, the fight got to be on the ground before it can really get competitive. And he's more of like a jiu-jitsu base. You look at his record, 6 wins, 4 by submission. Man,
his record is just like deceiving.
No, this record right now, this is another thing that you said, and I mentioned it with some other people when I was looking at their records, like the other Mateus.
Yeah.
And I went over the records. Now look at this. Now we're gonna go back and look at the record. Okay.
We talking about Nick.
This is Nick Fiore. These are his opponents. First guy, Steven, 6-20. George, 15-14.
It gets worse.
Andre, it's gonna get terrible, 9-5, which that's the most decent, 3-12. And look at this, 16-106.
Oh, he shouldn't even be fighting.
He shouldn't be allowed to even fight, man.
Look how many did he lose? Oh my God, it's like 30 in a row.
In the first round. This is insane. I've never seen anything like this before in my life.
Hey, all jokes aside, what's dangerous about this is when a lot of these fighters, when their record is padded like that, sometimes they can end up fighting an opponent who they don't really deserve to fight, and they can really get hurt.
Yes.
So that's the thing. You fighting somebody who can really hurt you because you won these fights.
I'm looking back at this fight where there's a KO slam loss. You got KO slam, and your number one way to win is getting the fight to the ground with jiu-jitsu, and now you about to fight Mateus. You know what this dude reminds me of, man? Even if it ain't stylistically, but you know who he reminds me of? The guy that Brian Battle just fought. Somebody who come in with a record like this, but they actually are like putting people away pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Renat striking ain't all the way there, but he got power. But this dude is more get you to the ground, do whatever you want. But he got more knockouts than he got submissions. Man, I'm taking Mateus. I'm picking Rebecki, man.
And he a southpaw too, and he got power on his left hand.
Yes.
And he throws straight punches.
Man, this fight gonna last. I get this fight no more than 2 rounds, man. And he been 5 rounds before. This 2-rounder.
The only thing is he got to finish Nick because Nick never been knocked out. He got knocked out as an amateur. But I'm saying like professionally, he's 6-0. He's never been knocked out.
He never been knocked out because he never fought nobody who could do it.
No, but I'm saying Mateus has to finish him because Nick not one of them type people who you want to play around with.
Look at the people that Nick has been fighting. It's really unfair to say, he hasn't been finished or this and that. Who was going to finish him? The dude that was 9-50? Like,
no, 12-100.
Yeah, like which one of those guys is going to do it? So
this is my most confident pick of the card.